Matthew, welcome to the program. How are you?
I'm well, Glenn. Thank you for having me.
You bet. So, I mean, a great article, really. I think going contrary to what everybody in the mainstream media is saying. They're saying, oh, he's bringing him over to Alaska, and that's such a win for Putin. I don't think it's a win at all for Putin. And it has taken him more than one day because he had to change the dynamics of American policy and I think the policies of the world. And you point that out in your article. You want to go a little deeper into that?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. No, I think that Trump is going to this summit today in Anchorage with a lot of leverage over Vladimir Putin. And you're right, the mainstream media wants already to characterize this as a win for Putin because there's a meeting taking place at all. But I think this fundamentally misunderstands President Trump. President Trump wants to meet anybody. He doesn't care. He's happy to talk to anybody. The question is always what will come out. And if you remember, he met with Kim Jong-un twice. Mm-hmm. And in Hanoi, when Kim Jong-un just wouldn't give up concessions on his nuclear program, Trump walked away. So that could easily happen this time. But I think the overall dynamic changed in just the past few months. The first step was getting Ukraine on board a proposal for a 30-day ceasefire on the ground and in the air. And as we know, Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, was reluctant even to sign on to that before that Oval Office dust up earlier this year. But Zelensky got on board, and that meant that Trump could then go and say to Europe, let's get additional leverage by agreeing to increasing our defense budgets. And then Trump agreed to this deal where NATO will purchase weapons from the United States. We're not spending any money. We're getting the money from Europe for these weapons, and then Europe would hand the weapons to Ukraine. That definitely got Putin's attention, as did our successful strike against Iran's nuclear program in June. Remember, Iran is a Russian ally. Iran has been supplying a lot of those drones that are raining down on Ukrainian cities. And we basically took Iran out. I mean, Israel helped quite a bit, of course, in the 12-day war. But so we've slowly ratcheted up the pressure on Putin, thanks to President Trump's policies. The most recent one was this 50% tariff on India. Now, we might say, well, what does that have to do with Ukraine and Russia? Well, India is a huge purchaser of Russian energy. And so when Trump says, look, we're going to punish third parties that are financing the Russian war effort, well, that's when Putin said, look, I'd like to talk to you directly.
Wow. I've been trying to figure out the India angle because India is a huge trade partner. We really want them on our side. That makes a lot of sense. So if they stop purchasing the Russian oil, then that trade barrier comes down.
Absolutely. I mean, this is how President Trump uses tariffs. Sure, he likes them for a variety of reasons. They raise revenue for the government. They want to incentivize foreign investment to build factories in the United States. But he likes them in particular because they're a way that he can use America's economic might to get results in the foreign policy sphere. And in this case, you're exactly right. The tariff is going on India because of the purchases of Russian oil. If they said we're going to reduce those purchases, then the tariff would come off. Let's not forget, too, the energy sector is hurting in Russia. That's really Russia's main source of economic growth and government revenue. And oil has declined some 19% year over year since Trump has taken office. That's partly because of Trump's energy policy, the drill baby drill policy. That's freed up supply. And of course, more supply means lower price. And that hurts Vladimir Putin as well.
They have I think it's when it goes, what is it, below $80 a barrel, they have to start dipping into reserves. They can't afford it. So
yeah, and I think when it crosses 60, goes under 60, then they really start to hurt.
Right.
Hey, Matthew, Jason Butchell here, Glenn's chief researcher. There's been a lot of I guess, word from the Europeans, Ukrainians, even the Russians, talking about territorial concessions, and like that's everybody's red line. Do you think with some of the setup discussions with Witkoff, with Putin earlier, do you think that there's any room for leeway here? Do you think that possibly Trump might have an upper hand with that as well, or will we see anything when that's always the huge red line between the two?
Right. Well, I think their administration and may have gotten a little bit ahead of itself right after Witkoff's meeting when you heard the president mention these land swaps. Very quickly, President Zelensky said, "Oh, whoa, I'm not ready for that." And then the Europeans also said, "Well, we need to be part of the table as well." Since then, in the days leading up to today's summit, Trump has been very careful to lower expectations. He's said that this is a feeling out meeting. Caroline Levitt called it a listening session. Trump has said, look, if Putin's not ready for a ceasefire, then I'm going to leave. And he's also said this is just the first meeting. He's been very clear in the past several days that any settlement, a settlement that would probably include some type of territorial lines being drawn, would only happen in a meeting between Russia, the United States, and Ukraine. And then, as President Trump said the other day, maybe he'd invite some Europeans to the meeting as well. So I think that we heard that land swap talk early on, but in the days since, I think the president has had a much more realistic view of what might be attainable in this first meeting with Vladimir Putin. Remember, he hasn't met Putin in person since 2018. So I think he wants to get a direct sense of Putin's body language and psychology.
That's important for the president, because I kind of studied some of the deals that he has done in the last, 15 years on land and as Trump, as a company. And there's a story about when he was trying to sell the New York Plaza, and he met with the Japanese people, and it was all arranged. All they had to do is just close the deal with him. And he got into the room, and he spent maybe 3 or 4 minutes talking and listening to them. Within 5 minutes, he had changed the deal and said, you know what, I'm building something over on the East River or the West Side Highway that I think you're really going to like. And he started, and everybody on his team, when they broke, they said, what are you doing? He's like, they're not interested in the plaza. He's like, I can tell right away, we're not going to be able to close that deal. I switched to this deal. So him face to face, there's something about him when he's negotiating face to face. He feels the room clearly that even his closest advisors can't translate and can't give him. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I agree completely. I mean, he makes very gut decisions based on people's appearances, based on people's body language. Are they fidgeting? What sort of health are they in? And these are things that are hard to assess over the phone, and even hard to assess when you have an intelligence briefer there. Trump, of course, always wants to see for himself. And so that's why I really do think this meeting will be exploratory. Remember, too, Trump has had this string of diplomatic success during his second term. Just last week, he presided over the deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan in the White House. And that was very important as well, because that part of the world, the Caucasus, has always been considered part of the Russian sphere of influence. And here we have two nations from that part of the world not going to Moscow, but going to the White House and shaking hands with President Trump to arrange a deal. And that Putin there, too, is saying, okay, I'm losing my influence, not just in Europe, where, of course, NATO has expanded rather than contracted since the Ukraine invasion, but even in my own backyard, we have these nations, Armenia and Azerbaijan, looking to Trump. And then, of course, we have, the recent flare-up between Thailand and Cambodia that Trump was able to stop from escalating out of control. Earlier in the year, India and Pakistan, the same thing. These sort of agreements that Trump has been able to marshal, preside over, use our economic leverage to obtain, I think is one reason he wants to have this meeting with Putin, because he's beginning to understand his method of bringing the two sides to the table and forging an agreement.
We're talking to Matthew Continetti. He's with AEI. He's a senior fellow and also a columnist for the Free Press. Matthew, I don't think anybody today really gives him the credit that he deserves as a master negotiator. He was known as that, in business, but what he's done in the last 7 months to the world and changing the dynamics of the world and bring all these people together, he's never going to get a Nobel Peace Prize. Everybody's like, "Where's somebody's going to nominate him?" Well, yeah, and yeah, let's watch that happen. Do you think at some point, assuming all these things continue to hold and he continues this trend, I mean, he could be one of the greatest peacemakers in American history?
I think so. I think he's taking a real lesson from Theodore Roosevelt, whose foreign
who won the
policy
Nobel
was-
Prize 100 years after he died. Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And, Teddy Roosevelt's foreign policy was gunboat diplomacy, right? No regime change and nation building, gunboat diplomacy. You have a strong military. You might have to do a raid every now and then, like we just did against the Iranian nuclear infrastructure, but also mediation. Theodore Roosevelt wanted the United States to mediate between different powers and get them to the table. And I see that working in Trump's foreign policy as well. And let's not forget, even in his first term, he had the Abraham Accords between Israel and several Arab nations. And so you're right, Glenn. He is a peacemaker. And I think that even though he won't get any credit from the liberal media now, the test of time will, I think, ensure his legacy. Because, going back to the first term with the Abraham Accords, the Biden administration, which followed him, never really gave Trump any credit, but they also didn't do anything to disturb the Abraham Accords and in fact wanted to try to expand them, just as Trump wants to do right now. So I think what he's doing is building a foundation that will last. And I also hope he's teaching lessons that future presidents can take to heart. America can use our economic power in a way to obtain peace agreements, to make sure that our position is maximized in different negotiations. We don't always have to resort to military force, even as we keep it as an option in a case like the Iranian nuclear threat.
Matthew, thank you for the insight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Wait, before you go, one more thing. You expecting anything to come out of this?
I have pretty low expectations, Glenn. I think
Okay,
there's a chance we may get some sort of ceasefire, but I wouldn't bet the ranch on it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Matthew. We'll talk again.